I want to thank all four of our panelists. This is the point in the evening where my job changes from being moderator to being provocateur. I have promised my colleagues that I would ask each of them a difficult question, and I'm basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each of them one hard question to field, and once they're done, fumbling. Once they're done answering thoughtfully, we're going to turn it over to the audience. I will say now, and then I'll say again just before you have the opportunity for question and answer, that the audience question and answer is meant to be exactly that. You're supposed to ask a question, not to make a speech, and one question, not 10 questions, and if we can, we'll direct your question to the appropriate authority or authorities. But let me begin with my colleague Shamsi Ali. In Europe, you mentioned that both circumcision and ritual slaughter have made Jews and Muslims common allies, particularly in Christian majority countries. And you know, no one's ever happy to see legislators vote against circumcision or against ritual slaughter, but it has turned out to be a good thing, at least for Jewish-Muslim relations. What happens in Muslim majority countries, like, say, Indonesia, where you happen to be from, and it's the most populous Muslim country in the world? What is the attitude towards Jews there, Shamsi?
Thank you, Rabbi. First of all, Professor mentioned about the high anti-Semitism among the Muslims toward the Jews. I think it is a fact, and we have to acknowledge about that. I just wanted to mention when I invited my congregation to go to a synagogue, and an Egyptian Muslim stood up and he said, "Are you kidding us?" So what do you mean? He said, "They will not open the door for us. They will not do respect us." I said to him, "Why?" He said, "Because those people are chosen people. Those people are, you know, superior, or more than that. Those people are arrogant, you know. They will look you down. Why you have to go there?" So I said, "Come with me." And he came. And he found people smilingly receive him. The following year, he asked me, "Are we going again this year?" You know, similarly, after my presentation at the synagogue, a lady stood up. And she said, "You know, it will be impossible for us Jews to be peaceful with Muslims." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because you guys have the madrasa where you train your kids to hate us and kill us." So I said, first of all, I am also a madrasa graduate. And I'm here trying to smile as beautiful as I can. Am I scared? You know, scary? And she was smiling. But I said to her, "How did you come to this conclusion?" And she said, "Because I watched a movie about the madrasa." So this is the problem of people just watching movie and take a conclusion. And so the point is, it is true. And I just came back from Indonesia. I was speaking about my book that I co-authored with Rabbi. It's something new, something strange for the Muslims to know that a Muslim imam and a rabbi co-authored a book telling about their friendship, telling about their transformation from someone who didn't like, let's say, you know, someone who is ignorant of others, to become not only friends, but working for one another. And I built a commitment to fight against anti-Semitism if I had the opportunity within my community. And the rabbi had the commitment as well. And we have proven that in the last few years we have been working together. And so again, I acknowledge the existence, but as I said, we began the journey and we will never back up. We're going to continue with courage. And that's why that is the only way to face the challenge.
I'm grateful to you, Shamsi, because I know that if there is one person who might be able to single-handedly change the attitudes of literally millions of Muslims in Indonesia, it is you, brother. So thank you.
By the way, I'm going back and to present this book in different universities, and I think it will be covered widely.
Great.
And I'm sure it will change a lot of minds in the country.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Right.
Jonathan, you spoke beautifully about your classroom, and you used the phrase that caught my attention, that with goodwill and honesty, you can actually accomplish a lot. Which leads me to the Middle East, where there is very little goodwill and an enormous amount of dishonesty on both sides, in both camps. So my question to you is, how do we here, where we're used to now, alhamdulillah, we're used to sitting, Jews and Muslims together, commonly, how do we here help them there? I told him earlier I wanted him to make peace in the Middle East. That was my plan for him.
That's a great question, Bert. I'm not sure that we can do that. Certainly not very easily. I think one thing we can do is model, and by doing what we're doing, or what Imam Shamsi is doing with Rabbi Schneier, is modeling what a Jewish community can do with a Muslim community. Zionism is built on many things, but including the idea that from Zion will shine forth the Torah, but there's also a possibility of a return shining, or mirror shining back onto Zion or Palestine. And I think that perhaps showing what we can do here is maybe the best thing we can do. That is showing that people can get along. But I would also caution against assuming or imagining that everyone there doesn't get along, right? I mean, again, if you read the New York Times, it certainly seems that way. But people on a day-to-day basis, you live in Jerusalem, or you live in Haifa, or you have to get along. And so on a political level, it's hard, but on many levels, interpersonally, you walk around the Hebrew University, that's an integrated environment. And so there are spaces on the streets and in the universities and elsewhere where there is actual true interaction and peaceful interaction. So I guess on the one hand I would say that we have to model the warmest sort of relations, and on the other hand I would say that we have to not imagine that it's all bad there.
Thank you. Thank you. Indeed. Ibrahim, the Peace Islands Institute has just been an extraordinary partner. Earlier today when we were eating, someone asked you, why is it called Peace Islands? And you said that the image came from this notion that there can be places in the world that are little islands of peace. And you are really not only trying to build a peace island, but a peace continent. And yet, we have our issues. And I want to speak to one of them, because Peace Islands has its origins as a Turkish organization, even though you are humanist and global and you do outreach. And I was wondering if you would be willing to comment on the current deterioration of relationship, which had once been a very strong relationship, between Turkey and Israel.
Actually, why don't I comment on that issue with the words of our source of inspiration, Mr. Fethullah Gülen himself. So, for those who know, he was interviewed by Atlantic Journal by Jamie Tarabai. And in his, I'm not sure if I have that part. Yeah, in this interview, he basically disagrees, and he openly declared, for example, all the Mavi Marmara issues and everything, so he openly declared that he doesn't issue how the Turkish government handled that. And one of the things that, as a matter of fact, I was hoping to critique, as one of a solution to the general problem from the Muslim side was the lack of self-criticism. So I mean, Jewish people can take it to their own side, but as a Muslim, this is my job. And Mr. Gulen does this. And he says, perhaps when looking at this situation, we should say that maybe we haven't represented ourselves, explained ourselves accurately to people. We do believe our religion is beautiful. We do believe it is peaceful. But we may not be the actually really good representative of the religion itself. When we reflect on this, we should say, if we were able to make it clear that we have nothing for them to be concerned about, it doesn't necessarily talk about just Israel in general who thinks negative about Islam and his movement. Then they wouldn't harbor enmity against us. We should give others the benefit of the doubt. Around the world, whole societies experience paranoia. Without actually you asking, this question you will love. She asks, some statements concerning Jews and Israel in your earlier sermons.
Gulen's sermons.
Yes, Gulen's sermons, earlier sermons in 1960s. She asks, some sermons, earlier sermons, have been perceived as anti-Semitic. How do you respond to this? That was the question. And he answers, and he does the self-criticism that I'm talking about. And those who know Abdullah Antepli, a close friend of ours, who's very active in interfaith dialogue, in every speech regarding this topic, you know how he starts? I am a recovering anti-Semite. This is how he starts. Accepting the fact there is a problem. And I would like to read the answer of Mr. Gulen, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
He says, we can consider this matter from different angles. First, it is always possible for a person to go through an evolution in this thinking. In an article I wrote years ago, I asked, are you today the same person as yesterday? And are your interlocutors the same people as yesterday? Neither you are exactly the same person, nor are your interlocutors, which means tomorrow neither of you will be the same person either. The actions and attitudes of your interlocutors affects your views and expressions. During the interfaith dialogue process of 1990s, this is the part that to me very important. During the interfaith dialogue process of the 1990s, when he met the chief rabbi of Turkey, chief rabbi of Israel, and had a connection, face-to-face, one-on-one interaction, humane relationship. Out of politics, out of history, and taking it down to the humane level, I had a chance to get to know practitioners of non-Muslim faiths better. I felt a need to revise my expressions from earlier periods. I sincerely admit, this is a big thing for a big scholar like him, to admit like this. I sincerely admit that I might have misunderstood some verses and prophetic sayings. I realized and then stated that the critiques and condemnations that are found in the Quran or prophetic traditions are not targeted against people who belong to the religious group, but a characteristics. Jewish people lie, bad people. Not because they are Jewish, because the lie makes them bad. It could be a Muslim, it could be Christian. The characteristics, that's it later on, how he interprets, that can be found in person. In some cases, my words have been taken out of context, so it goes on. So I think that tells us a lot about our self-criticism. First, we have to accept, yes, we have a problem. Yes, I have a problem. I myself, I have never been an anti-Semite because of the teaching of this man that I have read through. When he covered, he made us clear that everything is not as it seems or as you can go through. So sorry about that.
Thank you. It's a great answer because, of course, our teacher Gulen is world-renowned for his outreach now. And that's very important that the Turks also might be able to learn from him. Professor, Rabbi, Doctor Emeritus, I want to ask you a question as well about self-criticism. Ibrahim was right to bring it up, that religions need to do self-criticism. How do you, as a rabbi, as a very strongly identified Jew, how do you react to Israeli occupation and mistreatment of Palestinians?
With anger and frustration and embarrassment that a nation that I deeply love and respect, where I have many friends and a daughter, son-in-law, and 2 granddaughters live, engages in this kind of activity, all the while believing that they are doing it for a noble purpose. Whether they are religious Zionists and believe that this is messianically ordained by God, or political Zionists and believe that this is the best way to ensure the survival of the Jewish people should there be another terrible Holocaust. I find it reprehensible. I've made my views known. A lot of my Israeli friends would wish I wouldn't speak with these kinds of terms, but I think it's important that there be criticism inside as well as criticism that comes from the outside. That said, I want to extend the question of self-criticism and tell you a story. And you know this story because you were with me. Several years ago, you and I and a couple of other rabbis were invited to Doha, the capital of Qatar, for a conference on interreligious dialogue. The conferences have already been in existence for 2 years as Christian-Muslim dialogues, and they decided that it'd be good to have Jews because, as the reigning emir said, Jews are also children of Abraham. And so we were in the first group of rabbis to be invited there, and we went. I talked there about the issue of self-criticism. There is much self-criticism in Israel amongst Israelis. There is much less on the Arab/Muslim/Palestinian side. And I think it's important for both sides to be self-critical. I understand why there are Israelis who are critical of their own government's policy, and why Palestinians are not. Because the Israelis have a state, they have an army, they have a very robust economy, and lots of weapons. And the Palestinians have none of the above. Only aspirations to have those things. And therefore, I'm not surprised, and I, in a sense, forgive them for not being self-critical. And I hope that ultimately they will become self-critical, and that both sides in their respective self-criticisms will modify their own hostilities, their mutual hostilities.
Thank you very much. I want to point out that at that conference in Doha, which was in 2005, the chair of the conference was the chair of the Department of Sharia of Islamic law at the university. And she herself said, let me say that again, she herself said, we can all change our misconceptions about the Islamic world just in that moment, that she was very public about it, that there simply is not enough Islamic self-criticism. And she said that in a room mixed with Jews, Muslims, Christians, media, and it played very well in the room. So it is good to hear. And I thank Ibrahim, I thank Mark, Shamsi, Jonathan for their comments thus far.